What's up, Shred Sexies? Welcome back. Death to the Fingers. Um, I was balls deep in some legal stuff this morning because I was sensing a massive opportunity, so I have no real topic on my mind. But I thought it'd be interesting to talk about this rivalry sparking up on Twitter right now with respect to Game of Thrones and The Lord of the Rings. And it just shows you this massive disconnect on so many levels. Number one, of course, is this idea that you can argue about sort of inane things on the internet, right? About like, oh, a fantasy series or the movies and the TV series, however you want to encapsulate that idea. But as soon as that esprit transfers over to something like politics, uh, everybody starts having a hissy fit meltdown. It's funny, over the last 2 days, the fundamental change to the character and nature of Twitter is so massive that it's like it's almost a completely different site. And I haven't seen people's posts in like days. Certain people, they're just gone. I noticed it too on YouTube, like Become the Night. I don't know if you ever followed him. He does music stuff and analysis and all kinds. Yeah, I would imagine he just quit. I haven't seen a video from him in a long time. And I was thinking about that this morning. Just another sign of the time, boys. He's not the only one. I mean, Tom Quayle hasn't put up a lesson in like at least 5 years. He does is like gear reviews now, and he has, his lessons that he does privately, and of course, he sells stuff for teaching aids, I guess you could call them, for your mobile phone, or maybe you can run them on the computer. I don't know, but you know what I mean? Like the the old world from like say 2000 to 2020 is dying. You know what I mean? I never really thought in my lifetime that I would actually see like the prospect of robots actually sort of doing the things we would see in movies. I don't know if that's entirely healthy. It's probably not. You know what I mean? But I'm just saying that's what I mean. Like the pace of life is accelerated so insanely that it's just wow. Oh man, are we ever in for a tumultuous decade? Why do I have to be 50 right now? I mean, this is the worst time. Couldn't I be 40 at least? Well, anyways, the Lord of the Rings, I never read it. It's too wordy and too hoity-toity for me, if you know what that sort of means. I was more of an Elric and Corum and Hawkmoon. Then you have Sparhawk, the Belgariad. There's a whole bunch of them in there. Sword of Shannara. What was the other one there? Darkness at Sethanon with the magician and all that good stuff. So, listen, if you know the classics from the fantasy genre, you know them, and that sort of came after. It's basically, there's Michael Moorcock stuff, who also inspired a huge generation of fantasy writers with his multiverse concepts and with the Elric stuff. But at the end of the day, it really popped off in the 80s like so many other things when people just kind of jumped in on the game and commercialism took over and they were printing books. Really, that's what it was all about. They were just, why not just make books and see if they fly? That's how they did business back then. They didn't know if it was going to be a success, and then every once in a while something went viral or whatever, just like it does now with videos. Wow, shocker. Oh, I know. So you just take a whole bunch of spaghetti and throw it at the wall and see what sticks. Another one from way back in the day. So, that's my sort of like caveat, if you will, with respect to the Lord of the Rings. Obviously, I've watched the movies 100 times. I've read The Hobbit. We had to do it in public school or something like that for a book report. I remember that because I was like, this is pretty good. But then once I started into Fellowship, I was just like, negative. I frisbeed that bad boy right out of there. So, I'll just say that up front. But I did read Game of Thrones, and I know it's a Song of Ice and Fire and all the rest of that crap, but I'm just going to scale it down. But it became very obvious that he wasn't going to finish the series, right? Like after the kind of rapid fire, the first 4 books came out, and then there's this big gap. It's going to be the same thing with Clive Barker's Abarat. That's one series. There's only one other one, Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time. Excuse me. Where I actually went back and reread the whole series because I was like, I was already 10 books in. There's no way I'm not finishing this series. There's just no. And once I knew it was Brandon Sanderson doing it, arguably the evolution of J.R.R. Tolkien, because honestly, Tolkien developed the whole sort of like world concept with respect to fantasy. You know what I mean? Like he wrote 3 or 4 principal books, I guess you could say. But the truth is then he wrote another 10 books that actually allow you to understand what's going on in the 3 or 4 books. You know what I mean? Like, think about that. That's crazy. He was so creative that he was like, yeah, I wrote these books, but then I thought I'd write other books to sort of supplement all of the lore inside this book. So if you actually sort of like, it's like you can go consult things in an encyclopedia, like an academic experience, like you're hunting something down, information like Gandalf down in the basement of Gondor or whatever it is, Minas Tirith looking, for an account of Isildur. you do your thing, but that's what my point is. He basically pioneered that with respect to, and probably just pioneered it, but I'm going to say with respect to fantasy. So that's a bit more of a sort of literary accomplishment than just writing 4 books. And let's be real, like once George got introduced to the champagne tastes and sort of low effort work required to do like a TV or movie production from his perspective. I'm not talking about the people that are actually doing work. He sits around and is like, let's brainstorm ideas, right? And, draft up some storyboards, have people do it up. Like he's just a creative direction. It's not even like you have to do that much work, which is why you see him basically grinding to a halt. And honestly, you have to ask yourself if the reality is that if he finished the book, and that basically put a cap on this wellspring from which everything is just jumping out of the ground, like he's got another TV show, something, The Night of the Seven Kingdoms, who cares? Another book series or 2 or 3 that he's already started in favor of actually just ending the first one. And I'm like, end the first one and then write another one that's tangential to it, telling another story, and people will still be into it if they're really into it. You know what I mean? Make it as good as the first one, and I don't think you'll have any problems selling it, because I thought it was pretty good. I was actually more pissed off when you just didn't finish the actual story, but I get it. It's all good. So, you know what I mean? There is no sort of comparison. This is a fully fleshed out compendium of information with respect to an entire world built in fantasy, and this is an unfinished work. Is it engaging? Is it exciting? Does he have a fun writing sort of style and some pretty interesting ideas and literary tools? Yes, he does. He's an accomplished author. There's no doubt about it. You know what I mean? He's a very creative individual, but the excesses of Hollywood have wiped out the sort of motivation necessary to just stay lean and mean and get it done. Like, that's just it. Like, he's lost the eye of the tiger. The creatives, man, we live on the raggedy edge of poverty, right? So as soon as you get a taste of the good life, and you can see that if you watch videos of what he does, and I don't know, like, why you would release these videos to the internet in the first place unless somebody was spying on him, but I can't see how that works. But it's just him running around and jumping in his pool, or just wandering around his palatial house, and listen, good on you, man. I'm happy that you're doing well. I'm not trying to be a killjoy with respect to your accomplishment, but what I'm saying is like, you know what I mean? He's impressed with himself because he's finally, accomplished a certain level of notoriety and financial success to justify all of the hard work that he probably, and sacrifice too, that he invested initially to get to that position. Unfortunately, it was premature, and he didn't actually finish this great work. Where it'll be like in the same esprit, like you can't possibly think that if he even did finish book 6, that would even be remotely anything like the first 4. Like, what, 20 years after the fact? It's been like 13 years. Apparently, I guess. I don't know. I'm just trying to remember from the nerdrotic sort of expose that he was doing. I'm just like, what's going on over here? This is still going on because apparently, obviously, all the people are pissed off. They're like, where's the end of this book, man? You kind of appeased us so that we got to see the book in visual format, sort of. You know, like I only watched season 1 and I was like, man, this is already drastically veering away from the actual story. Why you would do that, I don't know. Like, but you know, they're like, oh, this isn't. They're like, we want to make a TV series with respect to your book, and then literally 2 seconds later, be like, but we want to change the awesomeness that drove us to want to make the TV series in the first place, and add in our own little sort of spin on it because it's not TV-ish enough. And I'm just like. Make as many episodes as necessary as for you to get this to work, and then find a series of books that actually translates to TV. Why do they always pick works of art to a certain degree where it just it doesn't always translate to film? You know what I mean? Like some books are just meant for the mind, I guess. Just like well, we'll leave it there, right? So I don't know. I guess that's just my observation, but ultimately, there's not much of a debate to be had here. Is Game of Thrones a good series of books for what it is right now? Yeah, it's very good. It's one of the better fantasy series, but again, the fact that it's unfinished is a major level detraction, and I really don't get the impression that he actually wants to finish it. I think there's some sort of FOMO thing, you know, kind of going on where he's just like, if I finish this, then I'll lose everything that I have now. And now that he's attained this level of success, he's probably, I guess, you know, deeply psychologically paranoid that you could potentially lose it, even though I seriously doubt that could happen unless he was incredibly irresponsible with his money. Like, there's no way you could have been doing the Game of Thrones thing and all the books and stuff like that and all the love and all the rest of it and be broke. That would be pretty hard. I mean, there's always Charlie Sheen. I get it, but you know, we're talking about George R. Martin here. He doesn't strike me as like, you know, what was Charlie calling themselves? I can't remember. The Awesome Nader. Awesome Nader. I don't know. Remember those days? What happened to those days, man? Come on, that was on national TV. That was just awesome. I mean, come on. I mean, I know it's the beginning of the end, but you kind of miss those wild west days of TV, the Morton Downey Jr. days. Remember that? Remember when Geraldo got his nose broken when the white supremacists went crazy on his Geraldo talk show? Another classic cinema one. That was the precursor to Jerry Springer. I remember watching Jerry Springer for the first time and trying to process if it was actually real TV or not. And at that time, it had to come on in Canada at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night because, you know, the powers that be were like, this is too hardcore for our audience. I mean, they couldn't turn down the eyeballs either that it drew, but they wouldn't air it on prime time. It was like late night. I was like, this isn't real. Seriously? This has got to be staged or whatever, you know, like a sitcom or whatever. Maybe it is. I don't know. I'll let you make your own decisions there. But yeah, the debate is over. You know, and that's just it. Like, again, George is a good author, but he follows in another long line of other authors that have been doing the same kind of thing, where Tolkien hasn't inspired people to do things that are just above and beyond. Like the Brandon Sanderson thing. I know some people are like, yeah, no, I'm not really into his writing and stuff like that. I get it. But I dare say you won't find a better person to do world building and stuff like that. And honestly, the intricacies of his novel and whatnot are really, really mind blowing. How they all tie together. So, you know, and he's one of the top guys in the game right now. realistic, he's probably the top fantasy writer in the game right now. Maybe not for creative output, but I mean, he's the highest paid. So make of that what you will, but that's how it plays out. And so, you know, that's the thing. One branch dies off because it's the creative soil is just tilled so much, it just loses its fertility and becomes, generic to a certain degree. And just people are like, I lost interest. Superhero movies is a prime example of that. For 15 years, we've been getting hammered with, probably more like 20 now, with superhero movies, and people are just like totally tapped out now. You know what I mean? Like, they're just like, I don't care at all. So, realistically speaking, I don't think that you can just write the sort of traditional fantasy novel anymore. Like, it's just gone. And honestly, where's the audience? I mean, the people that read that stuff, I can tell you from my own personal experience, I just like reading the classics now than trying to find new authors, because I've tried a few new people out and I was like, it's okay, but it's just not the same, They just didn't have the same sort of balance, in my opinion, of light humor, interest, action, a great storyline that gets the reader engaged, and pacing. They're either taking too long to describe something, which is ironic considering I just talked about Sanderson, but in that context, he ends up sort of like building on a much bigger tapestry. So the payoff is a little bit, harder to achieve. But once you get there, you're like, okay, I have a much more sort of larger appreciation for like this whole series of books. You know what I mean? And they all kind of tie together. That gives it this really cool sort of symmetry, I guess you could say. The Mistborn stuff was awesome. The second series is fantastic. You want a series of books you can just read and be like, this is great. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, like summer vacation read stuff where you can just sit down and be like, I want to read and enjoy myself, not feel like I'm actually being taxed here or I'm in school again. Just sit down and read a book and be laughing out loud and just be like, this is great. That book, I feel, is one of the prime examples. The Belgariad's another one. It's just really fun, start to finish. You start picking it up, and it's almost impossible to put the series down until you're done. And there's two, so win-win. But, modern series don't really do that as much. They try to over-politicize things and inject too much of the sort of, social justice and politics and all of this other unnecessary sort of fluff to the plot and everything to try to build up, whatever social sentiment with respect to some sort of amorphous issue, sort of tolerance or whatever it is. No thanks, man. Like, listen, if you want to sermonize, then go to church. Just entertain me with a cool story. And if all of a sudden this weird parable about tolerance happens to manifest sort of organically out of your creative endeavors, then fine, so be it. But if not, okay, right? Let's not go there. So that's the thing. We lost that bit, right? We lost the idea of how to be creative. The same issues that plague movies and TV, where there's just an absolute desert of creativity with the endless remakes, is now replicated across almost everything. Unless you're in your 40s or 50s, you probably haven't been exposed to anything that has been, that hasn't been just cynically mined to death. It's just crazy, right? Like, every aspect of the innovation of the 80s and stuff like that has been just repeatedly mined over and over and over for its intellectual property to extract every single dime. You know what I mean? When nobody was buying Barbie dolls anymore because it became passé or whatever it was, because they wouldn't keep up with the Joneses, if you will, to, entice the kids in a more technical world. Of course, they created a technical world that blew up the old one, so die, whatever. They pivot to make a movie. They'll probably try to make another one. It'll bomb, right? Like the first one was like, okay, well, I guess we'll go see the Barbie movie. But then when they try to do Barbie, Ken's Revenge, it'll just fall flat on its face because people will be like, I don't care anymore. It's just a stupid doll. It's a stupid plastic doll. Okay. So there we are. That's the whole video. There is no real debate here. And it's not about writing styles or anything else like that. It's about levels of creativity. Game of Thrones, although interesting and an interweaving set of storylines and stuff like that, follows a very predictable formula of this kind of a book. And Lord of the Rings does it too. Except Lord of the Rings adds a whole encyclopedic sort of volume of extra novels to explain the information in these 4 primary ones. And really it's the 3, but I'm going to lump in The Hobbit, The Hobbit too, because in my mind that's essential to the actual setting up of the story. And why they didn't do it that way when they were making the movies is beyond me, man. Like, what are you doing, you idiots? Like, make The Hobbit and then make Lord of the Rings, you dorks. Like, see what I mean? Like, what the hell is the matter with you? So, as cool as the books are and everything like that, you have to take the entirety of the work of art into consideration when you're asking yourself which is the superior series. And then, of course, the truth is revealed because there are whole channels devoted to Lord of the Rings lore on the internet with hundreds of videos explaining like an insane amount of information. I've watched probably 60 or 70% of them, the interesting ones too, you know what I mean? And trust me, after you do that and then you watch the movies again and whatever, sort of quasi live out the story for the 17th time, it makes a lot more sense. It makes way, 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 way more sense. Almost everything does. You know what I mean? And there it is. And that's the thing, like Tolkien was messing with ideas about the inherency of evil. That's what the ring is, in my opinion. It's like a magnifying glass. Like Sauron was evil because all of the things that he was interested in, like domination and power, authoritarianism, subjugation, those are all considered to be like vile traits, if you will, with respect to human beings. And so when he poured all of his will and everything like that into this ring magically, the ring itself became like a focus point to essentially amplify that in anyone that actually wore the ring. That's what gave him more power. This is his perceived power. This is how he sees himself, as his mental whatever self, you know what I mean? His mental image of himself. And then when he put the ring on, it's like when when you're a kid and you put a cape on and all of a sudden you feel like a superhero. You puff up. Same diff. So when other people wore the ring, of course, not only were they just not suited to wear it because this is a weapon or sort of tool, if you will, of, quasi God, right? Comparably to a human being, like these people have been around for millions of years or whatever, descend down from the chaos, if you will, when the main God there is making Middle Earth and the whole 9 yards. So it is what it is, but that's the thing is when the people put it on, obviously it's going to amplify all of the negativity within them, which is why you see different aspects. You saw how Galadriel basically acted, but then you saw how Boromir acted. It wasn't that they just became violent and attacked the person, be like, give me the ring or I'll end you. It's manifestations of their own personal weaknesses being amplified to the point where it obstructs reason and you can't see the forest through the trees anymore. Now, that's a fucking hell of a lot deeper than your sister banging your brother to sort of whatever, solidify power in a political situation. Right? So that's why one's considered a masterpiece and the other one is, although very good series of books and I guess a fairly entertaining TV show, ultimately falls flat because he just never finished it. And again, I don't know if you can finish it at this point with the same sort of object and purpose that you started out with. It's just too much time has elapsed and you've gotten too lazy. You know, you've sat around on your laurels for too long and now you've lost the eye of the tiger. So you really can't deliver with the same level of fire that you were coming out of the gate with. It is what it is. I appreciate every single one of you. I really do. You're the best. We'll see you in the next one.